It always starts with the eyes. The way she looks at you, it feels like you're being seen for the first time, not just looked at, but recognized. Like all your broken pieces suddenly make sense in her presence. You think it's love, but it isn't. Not yet. Because what she's seeing isn't you. She's not seeing the man you are. She's seeing the man she hopes you might become. A projected possibility, a promise she's written in her own mind and cast you in without your consent. And the moment you stop living up to that silent script, the role is recast. Not the story, just the actor. Carl Jung spent his life studying these invisible scripts. He didn't speak in fantasies or fairy tales. He spoke in truths so raw, they scraped against your soul. Jung saw through the illusions most people call love. And he warned us, especially men, about a dangerous reality that hides inside it. He called it projection. You think she's fallen for you, but she's fallen for an internal figure, a phantom she's built from childhood myths, romantic novels, half-heard conversations, and wounds she's never acknowledged. Jung called it the animus, the masculine image every woman carries within her unconscious. When undeveloped, it doesn't just guide her, it possesses her. And when that possession happens, she stops relating to you as a man. She starts relating to the idea of a man. And you, without even knowing it, become the actor playing him. That's why when she says, "You're different," it feels so real. Until you aren't. That's why the pedestal she places you on feels divine, until it becomes a guillotine, and you never saw it coming, because you thought you were being loved. What you were was cast. But here's the twist. Most women have no idea they're doing this. They believe their version of you is real until it isn't. And most men, they eat it up, because you've been starving for years, starving for approval, for purpose, for someone to finally say, "You're enough." And when a woman looks at you with those eyes full of belief, you mistake it for love, when it's really hope, or worse, expectation. You think you're being chosen, but you're being recruited to play the part she's rehearsed in her imagination since she was a little girl. And the moment you break character, the moment you show up as flawed, confused, contradictory, or worse, human, she feels betrayed. Not by you, but by the collapse of the fantasy. Now, you're confused, hurt, wondering what you did wrong, but you didn't do anything wrong. You just stopped being a convincing illusion. You failed to stay in costume. And because neither of you knew the game you were playing, now you're both in pain. This is where most men collapse. You blame her. Or worse, you blame yourself. You tell yourself if you had been more present, more romantic, more alpha, more whatever, she would have stayed. And so, you mold yourself again. You bend, you become agreeable, predictable, safe. You try to become the fantasy, not realizing that's what made you disposable in the first place. And Jung would scream at you from across time, "Stop." Because what you call love, he called possession. What you call devotion, he called self-abandonment. He warned that if a man refuses to confront his own unconscious, he becomes a slave to hers. And when a woman is ruled by her animus, and a man by his need to be chosen, it's not love that binds them, it's shadow. Shadow dancing with shadow. Two incomplete people trying to heal old wounds through new lovers, and calling it destiny. Let me be brutally clear. She isn't evil. She isn't manipulative. She's just unconscious of her own projections, just like you are. But that doesn't make the wound any less deep. You thought she saw you. She didn't. She saw what she needed to see to avoid herself. And you let her. Because deep down, it was easier to be her fantasy than to face your own emptiness. It was easier to be admired than to be known. It was easier to be needed than to be real. And this is where Jung draws the line between the boy and the man. A boy wants to be loved. A man wants to be seen. Even if what's seen isn't always beautiful. The boy performs. The man confronts. The boy waits to be chosen. The man chooses himself. And here's where most men quit listening. Because this is where the illusion starts to crack. This is where you stop blaming her for changing and start asking why you changed to please her in the first place. This is the moment you look in the mirror and ask, who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when no woman is applauding? And if you can't answer that yet, you haven't even begun. Most men never do. They run. From woman to woman, fantasy to fantasy, mask to mask, trying to escape the silence inside them that keeps whispering, "You don't know yourself." And that's why no one else ever will. That voice, that's the beginning. That's the moment of rupture. The moment the puppet strings snap. The moment the boy dies, and the man is invited to be born. Not guaranteed, not forced, just offered. The question is, will you take it? Because the truth is this: until you break the pattern, you are not being loved. You are being used. Used to hold up a fantasy. Used to avoid someone's shadow. Used to distract from your own. And as long as you allow it, as long as you let yourself be shaped, trimmed, packaged, and sold into roles you didn't write, you will never be free. But if you're ready to break it, if you're done performing, if something inside you is screaming, there has to be more than this, then don't run from the pain of this truth. Let it gut you. Let it burn. Let it break you open. Because what's waiting on the other side is real. Not performance, not fantasy, not projection, but presence. And that's where we go next. Let's talk about why this keeps happening. Why do you keep stepping into relationships thinking you're being loved, only to realize you were just filling a role someone else wrote? Why do you keep giving yourself away to women who never truly saw you, only to be discarded like a broken prop when the fantasy cracks? It's not just them. It's not just her. It's you. And not in a self-blaming way, in a self-responsible way. Carl Jung wasn't here to bash women. He wasn't trying to turn men into skeptics, cynics, or heartless warriors. He was trying to wake you up. Because here's the ugly truth no one wants to say out loud. You were trained to be this way. Trained to please. Trained to perform. Trained to adapt to whatever the woman in front of you wanted, even if it meant becoming someone you're not. From a young age, you were taught that your worth comes from utility. Be useful. Be agreeable. Be wanted. Don't take up too much space. Don't be too intense. Don't rock the boat. Make her laugh. Make her feel safe. Make her feel beautiful. And maybe, just maybe, she'll love you for it. But love built on performance is slavery wearing lipstick. And no matter how pretty the prison looks, it's still a cage. Jung understood this because he saw how society raised men to become strangers to themselves. You weren't taught to sit with your rage, your grief, your jealousy, your fear. You were taught to hide it, to smooth it over, to be a good man, which usually meant being a silent one. And women? They were taught something else. They were taught that emotion is their compass, that they are intuitive, pure, emotionally mature, spiritually evolved by default. It sounds flattering, but it's not. It's a trap for them too. Because when a woman is told she's already whole, she never learns to confront the chaos inside her. She never learns to question her projections. She doesn't realize she's not falling in love. She's casting. Jung called this a spiritual possession. And when the animus, that inner image of the ideal man, goes unchecked, it turns into a tyrant. She's not dating you. She's dating a ghost in her mind. And you, without knowing it, signed the contract to play the ghost. But here's the twist. You agreed to it. Why? Because you never learned how to be alone. You never learned to build a self so rooted, so whole, that you didn't need to be someone else's fantasy to feel like a man. And so, you volunteered. Not just once, again and again. You adjusted your tone, you downplayed your truth, you held back your boundaries. Also, she'd keep clapping for a version of you that wasn't real. And then you got angry when she stopped clapping. You got heartbroken when she left. You felt betrayed when she said, "You're not who I thought you were." Of course you're not. You never were. You were just acting, hoping the role would become real. But it doesn't work that way. You can't earn love by pretending. You can only earn applause, and applause always fades. Jung said that the only way out of this cycle is through individuation. What does that mean? It means stepping off the stage, tearing off the costume, looking in the mirror and saying, "I don't know who I am, but I'm willing to find out." And that's where the real war begins. Not with her, not with women, with you. You have to confront the part of you that's addicted to being needed. You have to face the little boy inside who still believes that if he's just good enough, she'll stay. You have to feel the emptiness you've been patching with praise. the loneliness you've been burying under sex, approval, validation. You have to grieve the years you spent living as a ghost in someone else's dream. And then you rebuild. Not for her, not for applause, for you. Because the man who walks through this fire, the man who stops blaming and starts building, the man who embraces solitude, silence, and self-responsibility, that man becomes untouchable. He's not bitter, he's not heartless. He just sees clearly. He sees the game. And because he sees it, he can no longer be used by it. Now here's the paradox. That clarity, that grounded presence, that refusal to perform, that's what women are truly drawn to. Not the act, not the mask, not the agreement, but the man who doesn't flinch in the face of his own soul. Most women have never met that kind of man, because most men quit before they become him. They go back to the applause, back to the stage, back to being wanted instead of being whole. Don't be that man. Because here's what Jung understood. The real work of becoming a man is in public. It's not loud. It's not sexy. It's private, silent, excruciating. It's sitting with your own unmet needs until you can hold them without outsourcing them. It's facing your desire to be saved and killing it. It's seeing your own tendency to perform and choosing presence instead. And once you do that, once you've seen the pattern, grieved the fantasy, and chosen yourself, everything changes. Because then, you can finally meet a woman not as a beggar, but as an equal. Not to complete you, not to rescue you, but to walk beside you. No masks, no myths, just truth. And that is where we go next. At first, it feels like magic. She looks at you with eyes that say you matter. She listens, laughs, leans in. She tells you you're not like the others. She calls you different, special, chosen. And for a while, you believe it. Not because it's true, but because you need it to be. Because somewhere inside, you're still starving for someone to finally see you. But here's what you don't realize in that moment. She's not seeing you. She's seeing her projection. The man she's always dreamed of, now wearing your face. You didn't earn that pedestal. You inherited it from her imagination. And deep down, you know it. That gnawing pressure in your chest, that voice whispering, "Don't mess this up," that's not love. That's performance anxiety. Because you're not being loved for your truth. You're being cast for a role. And you sense, even if you can't say it, that you don't get to write your own lines. You start editing yourself. You downplay your anger. You soften your opinions. You start smiling more. You say yes when your gut screams no. You become agreeable, predictable, safe. And ironically, that's when everything begins to die. Not loudly, silently. She doesn't yell. She drifts. She stops texting back as fast. She gets bored, cold, distant. She starts blaming you for things that don't make sense, and you're confused because you did everything right. You were kind, loyal, supportive. You did everything she said she wanted. So why does it feel like you're being punished for it? Carl Jung had the answer. He warned that when a woman's animus, her internal fantasy of the ideal man, is undeveloped, she projects that fantasy onto whoever fits the silhouette. And when you stop playing the part, even slightly, her psyche rebels. Not consciously. She doesn't wake up and say, "You're failing my fantasy." She just feels it. A slow erosion of the story. And here's the cruel part. She doesn't even realize she's doing it. She thinks you've changed. She accuses you of pulling away, becoming distant, losing your spark. But the truth is, you just stopped fitting the myth. She's not reacting to you. She's reacting to the death of her illusion. And that is when the collapse begins. You try harder. You apologize more. You over-explain. You ask, "What can I do better?" And with every attempt to win her back, you confirm her suspicion. You're no longer the man she imagined. You've become desperate. And there is nothing more repelling to the feminine than a man who's lost his center. And now, the part that shatters you. She leaves. Maybe not physically, but emotionally, she checks out. And you're left staring at the wreckage, wondering what went wrong. Wondering if you were ever enough. Wondering if love is even real. But let's call it what it is. She didn't leave you. She left the story, the myth, the script she was trying to write, with you as the lead. And you're not heartbroken over her. You're heartbroken over the role being taken away, because she wasn't the only one projecting. You were too. You projected your need to be seen, to be saved, to finally feel worthy. And for a while, she gave you that feeling, but it was never real. It was a trade. You played the part. She gave the praise. The moment you broke character, the deal fell apart. And now comes the moment of truth. You either collapse with the fantasy, or you rise without it. This is where most men lose themselves completely. They become bitter. They blame her. They swear off love. They join echo chambers filled with rage and resentment. But all that does is delay the real work. Because the real work isn't about her. It's about you. It's about finally asking the question you've avoided your whole life. Why do I keep giving my soul away in exchange for validation? Why do I need to be needed? Why do I chase women who don't know themselves, and then get mad when they can't see me? Why do I bend until I break just to feel chosen? Jung would say, because you haven't yet claimed your own masculinity, not the performative kind, not the alpha mask, cold shoulder, stoic posturing nonsense, the real kind, the kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that doesn't beg to be understood, the kind that's rooted in solitude and forged in truth. A man like that, he doesn't perform, he doesn't chase, he doesn't play roles, he stands. And here's the paradox. The more you try to be the man she wants, the less of a man you become. But the moment you stop trying, the moment you choose to be the man you are, everything changes. She may leave. She may call you cold, arrogant, detached. Let her, because she's not attacking you. She's grieving the loss of her projection. And you're grieving the loss of your addiction to being desired. That grief is sacred. That grief is where the old self dies, and the real self begins. It's not clean, it's not easy, but it's real. And that's where we go next. There comes a night, usually around 3 a.m., when you sit in the dark and realize you were never loved. Not truly, you were tolerated, you were admired, you were even needed, but loved, no. Because love requires presence, and you were never seen, only reflected. You weren't in a relationship, you were in a mirror, one polished by her unconscious fantasy. You showed up to love, but what she needed was a stage, and you played along, didn't you? You wore the mask. You read the lines. You tried to be who she hoped you'd be, not because you're weak, but because you're human. Because deep down, every boy is starving to be enough. But then the mask starts to rot. You catch yourself laughing at jokes you don't find funny. You nod at things you don't agree with. You shrink to avoid her anger. You inflate to earn her admiration. And slowly, brutally, you begin to vanish. Your center dissolves. Your voice dies. You become agreeable, safe, predictable. And in that safety, you become forgettable. You think love is about peace. It's not. Real love lives in tension, between truth and acceptance. But what you gave her wasn't love. It was a performance of love. It was obedience with a smile. And obedience is the slowest form of suicide. Jung called this the man's tragedy. Not that he's rejected, but that he'll bend himself into anything to be accepted. And here's the horror most men don't want to admit. You did this to yourself. You let her define what it meant to be enough. You abandoned your edge, your mystery, to become what she said she wanted. And the moment you became fully known, you became emotionally useless. Why? Because the feminine, in its immature form, is not drawn to comfort. It's drawn to chaos. Not destruction, but unpredictability, the unknown. The man she cannot fully grasp. Not because he hides, but because he is vast. You shrank. You became manageable. And she lost interest. Not because she's cruel, but because her animus, her inner masculine image, was never meant to be satisfied. It was meant to be integrated, but she projected it instead, onto you. And now, without even knowing why, she's frustrated, agitated, emotionally distant. You try harder. You ask what's wrong. You bend further. And in doing so, you confirm the death she senses but won't name. You've lost yourself. And no woman can respect a man who no longer respects his own boundaries. So what now? Jung's answer was simple. Not easy, but simple. You stop performing. You stop chasing. You stop molding yourself into the fantasy of a woman who doesn't know what she's projecting. And instead, you walk into solitude. Not loneliness, solitude. The sacred space where the real man begins to form. Not the man she wants. Not the man society applauds. The man who is. You begin to sit with your fears. The fear of being alone. The fear of not being enough. The fear of never being chosen again. And in that silence, you start to hear something. A faint, forgotten voice. Your own. It's hesitant at first. Rusty. Insecure, but it's real. It says things like, no, I don't want that. I'm tired of pretending. I don't need to be loved by someone who only sees what she wants to see. And this is where everything begins to shift. Because when a man stops performing, he starts becoming. It doesn't happen all at once. The mask doesn't fall in a single moment. It peels, slowly, painfully. You'll want to put it back on, especially when you're alone at night and your phone is silent. Especially when she moves on and you don't know who you are without her reflection. But stay in the fire. Because what's burning isn't you. It's the false self you built for her approval. And what survives that fire, that is you. The man who no longer lives to be chosen. The man who no longer contorts himself to be worthy. The man who no longer performs to be safe. You stop being available to women who can't see you. You stop being attracted to fantasy. You stop offering your soul to those who don't carry their own. And in doing so, you become untouchable. Not because you're cold, but because you're whole. And let me tell you something most men never hear. The moment you become whole, the entire game changes. You stop begging. You start choosing. You stop chasing love. You start embodying it. And women feel it. Not the ones still possessed by the animus. They'll call you distant, arrogant, too serious. But the rare ones, the ones who face their own shadow, they will see you. Not as a fantasy, not as a savior, but as an equal. And that is where we go next. And then one day, after the storm, after the silence, after the brutal unraveling of everything false, you meet her. But this time, something's different. She doesn't look at you with fantasy in her eyes. She doesn't see a project, or a savior, or a missing piece to her puzzle. She sees a man, a whole one. Not because you're perfect, but because you're finally real. She doesn't rush in with promises. She doesn't idealize or idolize. She simply arrives, fully herself. And for the first time, you're not trying to impress her. You're not shrinking to fit her comfort or expanding to earn her awe. You're just there, grounded, awake, fully present in your own skin. And it's enough. Because now, you're not looking to be completed. You're not handing her the keys to your self-worth. You're not asking to be saved. You've already saved yourself, and that changes everything. Because now, you're not attracted to her pain. You're not hypnotized by her chaos. You're not seduced by her projection. You're attuned. You sense the difference between a woman who wants to love and one who wants to be worshipped. You can smell the fantasy now, and you no longer mistake it for connection. And when she sees that, when she realizes she can't manipulate your presence, can't tug on your unhealed hunger, that's when you'll know you've finally stepped off the stage. And the ones still looking for actors, they'll move on. They'll call you emotionally unavailable. But what they really mean is, you can't be controlled. And that's the power Carl Jung left in your hands. He never told you to reject women. He told you to integrate the parts of yourself you projected onto them. He told you to find the feminine within, so you wouldn't have to chase it outside of you. Because here's the truth no one wants to say. The woman you've been dying to meet out there, she's just a reflection of the part of yourself you abandoned. And until you reclaim it, you will keep mistaking performance for intimacy. You will keep being chosen for roles you never auditioned for. And you'll keep waking up next to someone who doesn't know you, and maybe never did. But if you do the work, the real work, not the glamorous, surface-level self-help nonsense, but the ugly, slow, relentless confrontation with your unconscious, something shifts. You no longer need to be chosen. You no longer need to be seen, because you've already met the one person who matters, yourself. And when that happens, your relationships stop being transactions. They become reflections. They become choices, not compulsions. They become places of presence, not performance. Because you now see the difference between attention and love. between validation and truth, between being admired and being known. And here's the final twist, the paradox Jung understood better than anyone. When you finally stop chasing her, she appears. Not the fantasy, the real woman. The one who doesn't want you for your role. The one who doesn't need your performance. The one who meets you as an equal, not as a savior. She stands beside you, not because you rescued her, but because she rescued herself. And that's how you'll know. She won't try to carry your soul, and she won't ask you to carry hers. She won't ask you to abandon your path to walk hers. She will walk her own and invite you to walk beside her, not because she needs you, but because she chooses you. And you'll no longer feel the need to earn it. You'll no longer fear the silence between words. You'll no longer dread being misunderstood, because you are no longer performing. You're being. And being cannot be faked. It cannot be seduced. It cannot be replaced. That's the man Jung was trying to wake in you. The man who no longer asks, will she choose me? But instead asks, will I remain myself if she does? That question changes everything. Because most men lose themselves the moment they are loved. They become what the other needs. They dissolve to stay wanted. And in doing so, they disappear. But you won't. Because now you finally understand, being loved is not the goal. Being whole is. And when love arrives, true love, it will not ask you to bleed for it. It will not demand your soul as a proof. It will stand there, silent, steady, present, and say, I see you, all of you, and I won't ask you to change. But it will only come after you stop chasing it. So here's your final task. Unfollow the fantasy. Let the illusion go. Burn the mask, refuse the script, reclaim your soul. And when you do, you won't just be free, you'll be real. And in a world full of masks, that's the most dangerous thing you can be. If you made it here, I want to know. Comment below, no more masks. Because now, it's not about being chosen. It's about choosing yourself every single day. That is how you become untouchable. And that is the man Carl Jung was speaking to all along. You.